we made plans for a new motherboard. We hadn't decided official names yet, but if you know anything about the A-EON motherboards, they're all named after characters for the Mysterious Island by Jules Verne. So Dakar was chosen for possibly a replacement for the X1000, a full-size board, and we had another, Cyrus was another name for maybe a smaller board that could have multiple CPUs. In the end, we chose the Cyrus route and decided to create a board that would support 2 or 3 CPUs at different price points. Eventually, we selected the expandable Cyrus design, micro ATX size, and using 2 pin-compatible Freescale CPUs. It was going to be a P3041 and a P5020. Like most CPU manufacturers, they advertise the chips, but they're not actually available. So although they had the P5020, it wasn't really available in any numbers, and it was the early versions. So we decided to create a board based on the P3041. And it was a 1.5 gigahertz dual-core 32-bit CPU, and we thought it would be an entry-level mid-performance machine compared to the X1000, for example. And there it is in all its glory. It was produced, 4 prototypes produced, and anyone that's been involved in producing prototype motherboards, from scratch, these are not cheap, and the development's it's not inexpensive, and the boards are very expensive to produce. But the trouble was, it took a year, and the system really didn't work. They had real problems with pin compatibility, board layers, and in the end we decided, look, let's scrap the idea of this board. Let's go for a full ATX board. And Cyrus Plus was imagined. So Cyrus 1 became Cyrus 2 and became Cyrus Plus, full-size board. And at this time, around the same time, Freescale had brought out, or it hadn't brought them out, but announced the P5040 CPU, 64-bit, 4-core, 2.4 gigahertz supposedly, and we thought, well, we could have a mix. We could have 3041s, we could have 5020s and P5040s, and we could mix them and do different price points. But as always happens, feature creep, costs. The cost of a P3040 version was going to be about the same as a P5020 version. So eventually we dropped the P3041 and just started with the P5020, and still didn't have the P5040s because they still weren't available really in any numbers. Varus came back to us and said, look, we think we can make a motherboard for you which is a much smaller mini ITX form factor. We can cut all the cost out, and if you order in large numbers, we can get it down to an affordable number for you to sell to your customers. And we thought, that's a great idea. But looking around at the CPUs at the time, the only ones available, despite all the advice from other people, the only ones available which would match our series was the P1022, which was a 32-bit dual-core, 1.2 gigahertz with a special SPE FPU, which you've probably heard a lot about. So to get the price down, we signed a contract for 1,000 boards and prepaid for the CPUs. I'm glad we did, because the CPUs are now 3 times the price. So we had all these CPUs, but we didn't have. You'll hear why. So there we are. In March 2014, the first prototypes were produced, and there is the first prototype board, version 1 of it was called Tabor. Tabor, again, a name from Jules Verne's Mysterious Island. There's the machine that was going to be the entry-level, mid-performance Amiga 1. 50 boards were produced. We agreed a beta test program with Hyperion Entertainment for OS4, and the The first 10 boards were sent to developers to allow them to look at drivers and various other things. But it took an awful long time for OS4 to be ported to this board for a number of reasons, which I don't want to go into. If you want to find out, read the book. But fortunately, we had a great core Linux support team of volunteers, headed by people like Christian Zagotsky, who's in the room. Hopefully he's in the room. If you're not, he's downstairs. And they soon ported Debian, Slytaz, and various other PowerPC operating systems to the board to fully test the board functionality and all the onboard components. We even donated 2 boards to the Debian SPE official build program, and they were running 24/7 for about 18 months, 2 years. So it really did, test the integrity of the motherboard design. There it is, the version 1.1 in all its glory, but we still didn't have OS4 for it. So it's built for OS4, we didn't have OS4. And there's an early version of Debian PowerPC running on the board, and that's actually running Amiga OS 3.9 under EUAE. So there you are, we have a next generation Amiga running Linux, running Amiga OS 3.9 under emulation. And according to Christian, it performed very well. Eventually, we got an alpha release of Amiga OS 4 in late November 2016, and the first developer pre-released in January 2017. I commissioned a load time emulator to assist with any FPU instructions. Onboard Ethernet drivers were created by Rennie Olsen and Jamie Kruger. UBeat firmware was updated by Mark Olsen, the MorphOS developer. Audio drivers were written by Lyle Hazelwood. And eventually an updated ISO was created by Tony Wyatt. But you can see the time keeps ticking on, tick, tick, tick. And we spent an awful lot of money by this stage, and we still didn't have anything we could sell. And fortunately, A-EON works on a software package called Enhancer, and Enhancer is fully compatible with all of our hardware, X1000, X5000, and the A1222. And there's a DV player running an HD video on the A1222 with Enhancer 2.2. Fortunately, if you know anything about the history of A-EON, we had X5000 motherboards piling up in our warehouse. We were getting 30 a month delivered, which had to be paid for. And at that stage, we still didn't have an operating system that was usable for Amiga OS 4 operating system that was usable. So we weren't able to sell them. So eventually, when we had about 500 boards at almost £1,000 each sitting in our warehouse and no money coming in, things were getting a bit desperate. And with 1,000, even at the price we paid Verisys for the motherboards, which I think was about £300 plus the CPU costs, 100 times that is another big number. So, things were looking a bit tough. And then that happened. We all know that what happened with COVID. The world went into shock. Commerce stopped. Countries shut down their borders. I was locked in New Zealand for 3 years, couldn't leave. It was a strange time. And trying to build a new motherboard during this period was very, very difficult. We took control of the build of the motherboard from Ultra Verisys. Verisys had been acquired by a big company in the UK called Ultra. And our plan was that we'd recreate the motherboard under A-EON. And we signed an agreement with A-Cube, and A-Cube agreed to use their manufacturing companies in Italy to source the components and build some prototypes. It took 2 years, mainly through shortage of components, and in mid-2021, the first version 1.3 prototype was released under A-Cube's supervision, and it took a couple of months to bring up the board and get OS4 running on it, but I'm pleased to say it actually happened. The plan then was to build 110 boards as early adopter models and sell them to hopefully willing customers. But the fallout from COVID-19 meant there were worldwide component shortages. Manufacturing costs skyrocketed, in some cases 300%, and price increases. One component that was $6.83 was offered at $420 each, or you can wait a year for it. And so it was a really difficult time, but eventually we tracked down all the missing components. We placed an order with the manufacturing company in Italy, Mass Elettronica, and I just wanted it to happen. So I said, look, we're going to have to do this. I'm going to fund it. Whatever happens, I'm going to fund it. If no one buys it, I don't care. We're going to get this board out because we promised it. It's been going so long. We spent so much time, money, and effort. I want it out. So that's what we did. I paid money to the manufacturers. They've had a 50% deposit. Once they finish the boards, they get the other 50%. We get the boards. So I thought that's a good, let's just do that. I mean, let's just not sit on our backsides and wait for it to happen. Let's just do it. Fortunately, I've got a business partner called Matthew Lehman who keeps me sane most of the time, so stops doing all these crazy things. But I think that we had to do it this time. I think it was really important. And one of the boards that has been produced is down below in the machine, and this is from A-EON Technology, Lauren and Frank of Amiga Computers, and they sent to me this week, the images from the machine running this week. But A-EON's not just about A1222. I talked about the CPUs, the P5020 and P5040. I'm pleased to say we've now sold all of the P5040 systems. They've gone out, and now we're selling only P5020 systems, and now we're selling only P5040 systems. And you'll see 3 or 4 downstairs running various operating systems. It runs Amiga, the latest version of Amiga OS 4, and the latest version of Enhancer from A-EON Technology. It runs the latest version of Morph OS very nicely from Morph OS team, and it runs many PowerPC Linux distributions, including Phoenix 6.01 from Casey Cullen, which is a really nice Linux operating system, fully featured, just works out the box. Well recommended. We've got a new update version of Enhancer coming out. That'll be out for Christmas probably. It's got a lot of updates, bug fixes, some nice new little utilities. So if you're an Enhancer owner, you'll get this free of charge. So look out for that. A little project we've been working on with Hans de Ruyter, our graphics developer, is a Virtuo GPU driver for Picasso 96, with a lot of interest in running a QEMU. How do I pronounce that? Is it QEMU? QEMU? Anyone got an idea? No. Well, I'll just say QEMU because I like that. It's a virtual GPU for use with emulators and virtual machines. It's developed for A-EON by Hans de Ruyter. And it looks like a regular PCI device. So passing the graphics through the host operating system's graphics drivers. So if you want to emulate a Pegasus 2 running OS 4 with one of these emulators, QEMU or KVM, then you can get a nice fast machine under emulation, graphics-wise. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's a lot faster than what's there at the moment. And it gives you nice high screen modes. There's an image at 2048 by 1162, 24-bit. So you're not limited to the old Picasso screen modes or the other drivers that have been produced for this. And there's it running emulation of Pegasus under QEMU, running OS 4, and showing the PCI display controller. Another image running the Odyssey web browser, under emulation on a Pegasus 2, or Pegasus 2 under emulation. So it works ongoing. Version 5 is 0.5 has just been released. It's very usable as it is, and I think it will. Those interested in OS4 that don't want to buy a PowerPC machine will have the option of running OS4 at a reasonable speed and performance under emulation. So I hope that interests people who are in that camp. Future potential, it could be used. The Virtue library could be used for more drivers such as Networks, SCSI, and many others, and it may allow OS4 to be run natively in a KVM using a host OS drivers. So it makes things a lot easier. All I'm going to say is watch this space. It's an interesting one. It's not one that, I like hardware, I like the hardware we build, but emulation is there. Why not use it? And now a shameless plug for the Vultures to Vampire trilogy. I spent 3 or 4 years of my life working on this, and it's a bit like the A1222. I'm so pleased it's out. It tells the story of what happened to Commodore and Amiga IP after the failure of Commodore, and all of the companies and individuals who valiantly tried to resurrect the Amiga's fortunes, and coming to present day where we've got all the makers, enthusiasts, bedroom coders, builders, companies who are still pouring lots of time, money and effort into keeping this thing alive. I'm pleased to say that volume 2 and all the volumes are downstairs, but volume 2 and 3 3's just been released, 2 was released about a month ago. So the trilogy's out, so all those naysayers who said it wasn't going to happen and Yabu sucks. But lastly, I want to give special thanks to people who helped to contribute to the book. Dave Haney, who provided the foreword for the 3rd volume, but was also our technical sounding board. Every time I had a question which I thought, that's not quite right, I'd ask Dave and he'd give me a good answer. Gary Hare, who was the CEO of Amiga Inc. under Penticuri for a couple of years. He's revealed some previously untold dark secrets that no one knows, but you'll find out if you read the book. That's in volume 2. Eugene Van Oos, who's currently the CEO of Commodore Corporation BV, who owned the Commodore trademarks. He helped us understand the even more convoluted tale of the Commodore trademarks and the various problems and trials and tribulations they've had. But finally, I want to thank the amazing Amiga community. I've already said it in the opening speech, but without you, we wouldn't have this. Without our makers, our developers, our enthusiasts, and our crazy people, we would not have this, vibrant community that we have today in all its glorious flavors. So thank you too.